This week in the mail, I received this robe that I'm wearing. This is kesa or kashaya that started about 10 years ago. I received some cloth from a teacher of mine in Japan just before coming to Halifax. And when he gave it to me, he said, I want you to sew a robe and I want you to sew it according to this particular style. And I said, yes, I will do that. And then I came here and I got busy and the fabric was in a bag and it kept getting pushed further and further and further to the back of the shelf and it wasn't getting made. And then last year I heard that Yuko Okumura, who is at this moment the preeminent teacher of sewing the robes in North America, she had taken on an apprentice, Esho, and the two of them were taking on projects. They were taking on styles of robes so that Esho could experience sewing this kind and sewing this kind and sewing this kind. And not unselfishly, I reached out and I said, have you sewn one of these yet? And they said, no. And I said, I have some fabric you could use. And they took it on and spent a few months working on this. And on Facebook, you could see reports, updates about how it was going. And then this week, for the first time, I held it in my hands. And some of you know, I've dedicated a lot of my practice and a lot of my time to a study of the robes. I'm obsessed with the robes. I like to talk about them, and I can talk about them forever. There are a lot of things I could say about this style of robe and the history of the robes in general and how all this comes together. And I could talk about my own experience of the robes. For me, the robes were a kind of gate into a part of this practice that I found difficult. I had some resistance to the ritual. I had some resistance to the parts that felt not rational. And for whatever reason, the robes opened that door up for me a little bit. But tonight I wanted to talk about just one aspect of the robe, or one teaching from the robes that speaks to me. And it's this. It's that when we look at something like this, when we look at something that is of the Buddha, we're told that we shouldn't say, this is beautiful. We're told we shouldn't say, oh, that's so cool. We don't say, that's really neat. Even if we're thinking it. And maybe we are. Maybe especially if we love these things and we see one that we've never seen before, or we see one that's very skillfully made, and the words that come out, oh, it's gorgeous. But the teaching is that when we look at something that is of the Buddha, if we look at it with those ordinary human eyes, the ones that attach an adjective to everything, that judge everything, that evaluate everything, that we diminish the thing and we miss the experience of the thing. I heard this first from a teacher named Okamoto Roshi. She was a nun and she passed away in recent years, but she used to come to Nagasaki, where my teacher who gave me the fabric was, every year. And she was talking about this one time because, of course, at these events, you hear people saying, oh, it's beautiful. And she'd say, no, 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 no. And then she'd have to explain it again. And then naturally, the next question is, if we can't say it's beautiful, what can we say? And she paused and she said, maybe you could say, sugoi. And sugoi is a word, we don't have a good word for this in English, because it can mean something that's terrible, but it can mean something that's awesome. So if you're translating it in text, you might use a word like that. But the feeling of sugoi is just wow. It's wow. It leaves an impression on you. And you don't know what to say. So you say, oh, sugoi. She said that would be okay. That's a reasonable thing to say. It's the feeling before the word. We receive a teaching like this, and at first it's very simple. Right? We think, okay, well, the next time I see a robe, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Or I'm just going to say something like, ooh. Right? And then we start to expand it a little bit, and we notice a Buddha, for example, and we catch ourselves. Okay, I'm not supposed to say that's a really cool Buddha. We say, wow. But because this tradition is what it is, because these teachings are what they are, it's a missed opportunity. It's a waste if we say that the things that are of the Buddha are the things that look like they're of the Buddha. It's all of the Buddha. And so whatever we come across, whatever we encounter, we have an opportunity to meet it without the adjective, without the evaluation of, oh, that's really beautiful, or, oh, that's kind of disappointing. That could have been bigger. That could have been brighter. It could be funnier. It could be smarter. It's genius. Whatever that evaluation is, it always means that we're measuring. We're measuring the world. We're measuring our experience. And in doing so, and I know I talk about this all the time, in doing so, we make it small. Even when we're measuring something really, really big, when we measure it, we make it small. So there is this invitation here, this invitation to let go of something that feels important. Poets understand this, I think. A poet can't be writing poetry all the time. The trap for the poet is to look at the bird or the tree and to immediately attach the phrase, to immediately attach just the right word, to capture it there in that moment. Because in that moment, in that choice, we take something that's immeasurable and we bottle it. And we put a little cork in it so that we can carry it around in our pocket. Poets understand that sometimes you need to just see or just hear, that you need to revel, that you need to allow. Try this. Take a walk, take a hike. Really notice the things in front of you. Talk about them with the person next to you. And don't describe them. Don't say what you think about them or what they could be or what they're becoming. See how many times you find yourself just saying, wow. And when you don't know if it's not wow, maybe it's something like, huh. resting in the curiosity of that, in the wonder of that. In the pure amazement that we're now face to face with something that wasn't there. We take this up as a practice of seeing first, I think, because that gives us a lot of opportunity to catch ourselves. And then we can move into a practice of hearing, which is so hard because when someone is speaking to us, we're judging all of it. We're evaluating all of it. It's right, it's wrong, it's eloquent, it's coarse, it's right on, or it's a little bit off. And at the same time that we're doing that we're bottling that up for ourselves, we're rehearsing the thing that we're going to say. And we're also thinking, oh yeah, that's really good. Or I need to tweak it before they stop talking because I really need to say the right thing. What if, as we listen to someone else, we just listen to someone else and we say, wow, huh? And after this is a practice of seeing, and after this is a practice of hearing, it can become a practice of thinking. Where we notice our own thoughts, our own anxious thoughts, and our funny thoughts, and our frightened thoughts, our brilliant thoughts, and our not so brilliant thoughts. And we allow them. We notice them arise. And before we package them, we say, huh, look at that. Before we decide that that's a thought I want or I don't want, that's a feeling I want or I don't want, that it's beneficial or that it's harmful, that it reflects the kind of me that I want or it exposes a kind of me that I don't want. We can just say, huh, look at that. Because that anxious thought is also of the Buddha. The thing your boss is saying is of the Buddha. That rock on the trail where you just stubbed your toe is of the Buddha. Your neighbor's garbage is of the Buddha. Not because it comes from the Buddha, but because it is Buddha. It's that same thing that everything is. It's beyond our judgment because it doesn't need our judgment. It doesn't need our judgment in order to be complete. It doesn't need our judgment in order to be whole. You don't need your judgment in order to be whole. This doesn't need my judgment in order to be whole. There's the wow of the thing itself, and there's the wow of the idea. that I can just leave something alone. I don't need to put my hands all over it. I don't need to arrange it just so. I can, but I don't have to. I offer this up here at the start of spring because we step outside and it's warmer and things are starting to change and there are little flowers. I see the little flowers, these little white flowers outside of the temple here. And I notice how sometimes I see something like that and I think, oh, they're so pretty. But other times I think, wow. And I'm just so excited that they're there. And when I compare those two responses to the same thing, I feel how one is like something, it's like an aperture narrowing. And the other one feels full of life. It feels like gratitude. There's so many opportunities for this because there are infinite opportunities for this. There's no non-opportunity for this. So that's our homework. And that's where I'll stop.